with vehicle and asset finance from ABSA. Today, tomorrow, together.
This is our look back at the 2008 ABSA Off-Road Championship Series. 8 races, more than 4,000 kilometers of hard grinding racing, and 6 classes to be contested. We're off to round 1 of the National Championship, the Nissan Dealer 400 in the Western Cape. Darling has, over the last 5 years, provided the season opener with a dry, hot and dusty race that sets the tone for the 7 remaining events in the ABSA Off-Road Championship. Nissan's defending national champ Duncan Foss was flying away up front, while Mark Grenier and his navigator Chris Birkin kept the chopper pilot on his toes with some exceptional driving. The pair were newly crowned national rally champs in class and were trying to be quick, yet also conserve the Toyota. Mountaineer Ivar Tollefson and his British navigator Quinn Evans were climbing up the standings, backing up Foss and 3-time champion Hannes Grobler in their Nissan Navara. The multi-talented motorcycle legend Alfie Cox and his co-driver Henny ter Steege in the all-new Motorrad SP were also hoping to add to their already impressive list of achievements in 08. Bevan Berthold and Robin Houghton were 7th in the SP class and going well. The research and development department at Toyota had been busy and it showed. Neil Woolridge and Kenny Scholthammer's Ford Ranger raised not just a few eyebrows by taking the fastest loop after helping at an accident scene and raced into 3rd place. But the dust throughout was debilitating and robbed teams of any and all visibility at times. But the Micra and Excel dealer team Toyota, father and son Higo and Jaap de Bruin, soldiered on regardless. George and Sharon Barkhuizen tested their marriage vows in car, but this time there was no need for that, as they debuted the Ruricon Toyota Hilux in the SP class. Forward were trying to keep the top 10 blue and white. Cobus van Tonder and Rian Guapa and the Unifreight Ford Ranger took 6th, battling the billowing powdery dust all the way. The scene was set early on, not just for the Nissan Dealer 400, but also for the rest of the season in all 6 classes. And there was a lot of racing still to be done. In 07, Nissan won 7 out of 8 races, and the other manufacturers were all ready to topple them from their lofty perch. Meanwhile, Coetzee Labuschagne and Johan Gerber were setting the pace in Class D. And Team Barbaspan's Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux have taken the lead in Class E in their Toyota. This was a battle that raged all season long and was one that intrigued scribes and fans alike. With second-placed Class E races, Thomas Rundle and Brian Roberts in the Bowden Tyre Services Nissan Hardbody starting their year on just the right note. The class racing was exceptionally competitive, as it always is in the ABSA Off-Road Championship. And campaigning for the first time in the SP class, the green and black Landy of Harold and Tian Kun trundled into view to mark their debut. They took 7th. In Class D, the brothers Matten, Henry and Maurice had battled to get their Ryobi Nissan going after the prologue, but they eventually did, and from here on in, they were very impressive. But Cliff Weichelt and Jimmy Goch in the N1 4x4 were earmarked to be their greatest competition for the year 2008. In Class E, Jack Peckham and Lotio Santoro in their 2.5-litre diesel Ford Ranger pulled 3rd place. But back in Darling at the finish line, the Nissan celebrations were firing up. Duncan Foss clocked 4 hours and 44 minutes, leading the way home with a scant 36 seconds to spare. With Labuschagne and Gerber triumphant in Class D and their Nissan by 13 minutes, and in E it was Visser and Leroux who had a 4-minute gap over Rundle and Roberts. Foss had just picked up where it left off in 2007 and was pleased as punch.
We had a perfect weekend. It started off on a good note on Thursday when we shook the cars down, and they felt really good. And I thought we were going to be in for a good weekend after Thursday. But it was perfect. You know, we didn't have one little bit of drama with the car. It ran perfectly. No funny noises, nothing. Rafi was great, and Hannes made one mistake. I think he stalled his car on one of the turns, and we passed him, and that's the name of the game these days. You cannot make a mistake. It's so competitive.
The Eastern Cape 500 round 2 of the 2008 ABSA Off-Road Championship was a tough challenge. This route was totally different to any other the 60 drivers in the production car class and the specials had faced before. A substantial part of the event, reduced from 1,000 k's to 500 because of recent fuel price hikes, was to run in the Longmore Forest area in and around Port Elizabeth. Lots of blind rises and corners with drop-offs, off-camber corners and other surprises made up the route, consisting of 2 legs which covered 430 kilometers. Foss, with stand-in driver young Louis Weichelt at his side, was not having a smooth ride and battled electrical problems all the way through for a disappointing 7th place, possibly denting his championship chances. Commanders thought the production cars were quick on this route. It meant a slightly different approach and, of course, the resultant faster speeds. Ford's boys loved it out there. The SP Class 2 had grown and had stepped up the competitiveness. One mistake and it's 2 or 3 places gone. And then, of course, in Alfie Cox's case, bodywork as well at the same time. And maybe that turning circle needed a little bit of work. Nissan were the defending manufacturers' trophy winners too, so Ford and Toyota were determined to put a stop to that. But the Midrand-based squad would be tough to stop, if at all. Cronje clocked the fastest production time bar none on Loop 1, but surprise, surprise, next to appear was the Ford of Woolridge and Scholthammer, with their stablemates Mark Ferguson and Craig West, and Kobus van Tonda and Rian Guapa also right there. Another new SP entry, the IDM Cement outfit with Jaco Swanepoel and Keith Solomon aboard, also gave good reckoning of themselves, announcing their presence with a solid 9th. Class D, and right here is where the Zermattens decided to take control of the 2008 season and just never relinquished it at all. The Rhobi Nissan was in full flow and also reliable. The Alberton-based men never looked back again. Class D has always been an intriguing one, with as many as half a dozen drivers and teams who have a chance at winning every time. Cliff Weichelt and Jimmy Goch was one of those. With another team of relative newcomers, Christian de Plooy and Henk Janse van Vuren, announcing their seasonal intentions early on in the same class. Class E is a breeding ground for potential SP class races, but these almost stock same vehicles had a huge rate of attrition in the PE area, and all but one of them, Dewald van Breda and Pieter du Plessis, dropped out. Toyota's Berthold and Houghton flipped their brand new Hilux, and that was the end of the road for them here, but also signaled the replacement of Bevan as a works driver for the Japanese manufacturer. At the sharp end of the field, though, it was a big moment for Toyota as Cronje and Birkin stormed to a comprehensive 10-minute win over the rest. Only 10 SPs made it to the line after the 500 Ks, but Woolridge and Scholthammer piled on the points with a second podium finish. In Class D, it was brothers Zermatten who only won by 25 seconds over Weichelt, while the Class E victory went to Van Breda and du Plessis. For a Fluish Cronje, it was a long time coming after being so heartbreakingly close the previous season.
I mean, we started this morning not knowing, what the pace is going to be like. Got stuck behind Gary for a little while, and we just kept pushing, getting close to him. I mean, you can see what the front of my car looks like. It just roasted us with these big rocks. And eventually we got past him, and then we got into a rhythm and managed to pull a nice lead. And coming in, we weren't too sure if we had a big enough gap. We went out to the second loop. The flu was taking its toll on me, and I just decided to take it fairly easy. I had to look through the switchbacks. I couldn't see anybody, so I knew that I'd had a fair-sized lead and just brought it home. But the guys have done a great job. I mean, the car has just been so awesome this weekend.
From there, the off-road circus pitched its tents in the sugarcane of Eston in KwaZulu-Natal. Entries in the SP class had risen to an all-time high of 13 in 08, and the big 4-litre production car list was headed up by the defending champions, Duncan Foss and Ralph Pitchford, who in the fire-engine red Nissan Navara were obviously marked rather tightly due to their national champion status. In the Ford team's backyard, that would be exactly the same case, and then some. This was the third of 8 races in the series, and this part of the season started becoming defining for teams, as the early teething problems should have been sorted by now, and the car, driver and navigator as well as the mechanical combination should have settled and started delivering results. The Nissan Sugarbelt 400 was crunch time for a lot of teams, Cronje included, after picking up his first win of 08. Setting the pace at the top of the production car log, it was indeed Mark Cronje and Chris Birkin, while Foss and his co-pilot Ralph Pitchford were just 2 points back. Just 16 points separated the top 6, and that group included 4 former champions. Clearly the pressure was on. The Mechren Excel dealer team Toyota and the skillful hands of Hugo and Jaap de Bruin was another season stronger in the experience department, and it showed as they worked the route for all it was worth. Under leaden and rapidly darkening skies, all the SP vehicle participants were trying to find the fastest yet safest way around a route which was mushy and slippery at times, and at others dusty and dry. Mark Ferguson and Craig West in the second Ford Ranger were jumping up the order and were on a roll when they really had one. Just into the corner with the weight on the wrong side of the car, and over she goes. But luckily it didn't take them long to change the windscreen to a special class vehicles, and they were back on terra firma and speeding along again. With Toyota's newcomer Anthony Taylor, a multiple track champion in car with navigator Robin Houghton in the third Castrol Toyota Hilux feeling his way around, he finished 8th first time out. The Burley man has a fine track pedigree, but he was far away from any blacktop here, yet he was in control and racing quickly. But the sight of the stricken Ford certainly got the Toyota lads thinking about keeping it on the straight and narrow at all times. Ivar Tollefson and standing navigator Francois Jordan made a big push mid-race and had the Toyota and Ford camps looking over their shoulders. For them, the trick was to find a balance between sensible racing and preserving the Navara, which in effect is the watchword for good performances in off-road racing. Grenier thought to travel lightly would help, while Tollefson and Jordan's foray into the top 5 ended with a flat. And proving our point of the competitiveness of the formula, car after car streaked by, each one relegating the Nissan Dio one more spot. As for the Barkhuizens, George and Sharon, their charge had become reliable and therefore their consistency had improved rapidly. The husband and wife team was starting to become good value for money. Moving to Class D, and Kutsia Labuschagne and Johan Gerber were ruling the roost. Wilders and Mattens and Weichhout with Koch could not get it to the line in one piece this time. That gave De Plooy and Janssen van Vieren some valuable championship points in second. And ditto for Visser and LaRue, who are running things up front in Class E, looking for their second win of the season. But they certainly weren't having it their own way. Peckham and Santoro were all over them like a rash and pushing hard. With only 12 minutes covering the top 3, again with things so tight, mistakes were out of the question. And predictably, there were none from Duncan Foss, with Ralph Pitchford at the usual pinpoint accurate best, and a 6-minute victory for the Nissan Navara crew, as well as a leap to the top of the championship standings. Krobler and Moore had several mechanical troubles and could not crack a top 10 spot. There were 2 finishes in Class D, with the Raconic team pulling up full house of points, while Toyota packed 4 into the top 5 in Class E with an eye towards the manufacturer's trophy. Woolridge, second again, confirmed the tight racing.
Very close racing. The SP class, the way it is now, you can't even blink and someone passes you. So it was very close racing, and I think we lost a little bit of time on the first loop this morning. Maybe I was a bit too tentative with it being wet, and with the new tyres I wasn't 100% sure of them, and we kind of like lost that minute, and we were just never able to make up that minute again. So kind of like kept the gap like that most of the day. And yeah, that's pretty much it. But it was a great event. The car was perfect, and no problems at all.
We won't have any either, because we're back after the break.
Vehicle and asset finance from ABSA, going the extra mile.
Proudly brought to you by MTN.
Vehicle and asset finance from ABSA, going off the beaten track to find solutions.
The Toyota Kalahari Botswana 1000 Desert Race, round 4 of the ABSA Off-Road Championship, has always been a race that stretched vehicles, crews and drivers to the limit and then beyond. The desert certainly takes no prisoners, and in the Botswana capital, Gaborone, the organizers had set up a route which traversed some of the most varied terrain the drivers and navs had experienced in years. It was a grueling but fair test. Duncan Foss and Ralph Pitchford had notched up 2 wins already in 08, but they still had a 6-point lead over the consistent Ford pairing of Woolridge and Schulthammer, with Toyota's Grenier just a further 2 points back. And the manufacturer's race was also still wide open. Toyota had a 9-point lead over fellow Japanese giant Nissan, while Ford was 20 points in arrears. It shaped up to be a thrilling side contest, and it was. Up ahead for the teams was a 250k run to the first designated service point at Hatsala Cloudley, where there was a scheduled 15-minute decontrol, and then the ride home, which would skirt the central Kalahari Game Reserve. The deep and very heavy desert sand had drivers fighting forearm and hand cramp, while navigators had to hold on for dear life. With time slipping away, the 51-year-old Nissan stalwart Hannes Grobler knew that he needed to turn his season around, and the desert provided the perfect backdrop. He was going hell for leather. However, Grobler's unlucky season continued. This time, he and Moore had a 30-minute stop to repair a spring on the accelerator mechanism. Not ideal if you're trying to win a 4th championship. Tyler, in only his second major off-road race in the SP Toyota, had shown great improvement and had a superb drive right into 5th place with a delighted Robin Houghton right beside him. The Barkhuisens too showed good form, and that their best ever finish in the desert in the Bloemfontein-based Rubicon SP wasn't a fluke. While exactly the same could also be added behind the names of Jaco Swanepoel and Keith Solomon, who obviously love it when it gets really tough and really long, like 1,000 k's worth of long. And as Kobus van Tonder and Rian Gropper found out, the local transport can be cumbersome and slow to get moving sometimes. After a disappointing run in the cane fields of KwaZulu-Natal, the Rhobi Nissan with Henry and Mauricio Matten on board was back to its best and making the running in Class D. With the Raconic lads, Labuschagne and Gerber a good 18 minutes in arrears. At the halfway point of the season, the Class D battle was wide open. And after a fine 3rd place in the sands of Botswana, Duploy and Janse van Vuren would have fancied their chances too in their Toyota Hilux. In Class E, the very experienced Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux in the Castrol Team Barberspon Toyota Hilux led the Toyota Challenge, with Leroux, the reigning co-drivers champion, making a strong statement. The Kalahari bush is very dense, and as a result, it's very penal. The sand is unforgiving, and to top that, the ambient temperature was rising steadily too. Throw in the massive distance, and it's clear why this event is always a true race of attrition. Some of the wider country roads are speed-friendly, but then one has to keep in mind that it's a long way to go, so you have to save the car. It was tough out there, so tough that less than 70% of the field saw the finish line of day 2 in one piece. A typically tough desert race in uncompromising conditions. No surprises after all those miles. It was Duncan Vos and standing Louis Weichelt in a flying Sasol Nissan Navara. A 3rd victory in 4 races, and this one too added another vital 25 points to an already impressive championship tally. Krobler stormed through the field to take 4th. In Class D, the Zermattens took the win and big points in the national championship, while Visser and Leroux had a 20-minute gap over Van Breda and de Toey in Class E.
First 2 days we battled a little bit. I battled a bit in the time trial. Yesterday I battled, but we kept our heads together. We knew we were slightly off the pace yesterday, but I knew overnight we could do some improvements to the car, and I was confident that we could do well today, and we improved the car, and we had a really good day today.
At the halfway mark, and Vos with a slender but vital 16-point lead. The consistent Ford Dio were also keeping an eye on Cronje and another on Grobler. And the points battle in Class D only had the Raconics team ahead by 8, with Visser and Leroux enjoying an 18-point margin over Peckham and Santoro. Very little breathing space anywhere. To the city in the sun and situated in a prehistoric crater, surrounded by the impressive Pilansberg, Sun City's charms are plentiful. That's if you're on holiday or on a golf trip. But if you have to face 400 dusty, dry, tough and uncompromising kilometers, it's a different proposition. Mr. Grobler, Scholthammer and Cronje were chasing one Duncan Vos, the defending national champion and 3-time winner in the early season. Grobler and Young Moore in the Nissan got an 18-second prologue win over Cronje and Birken, while Ford's challenge was underpinned by its spectacular consistency. 4 races, 4 finishes, each one on the podium. The battle lines had been drawn. But for the Nissan team, it was sweet and sour. Championship log leader Duncan Vos had broken a prop shaft and limped home with a 90-minute backlog. For his teammate Grobler, it meant that it was time to let her fly, and he did. The Sasol Nissan Navaras were all flying, Tollefson and Quinn on a mission to win for the first time on African soil. Meanwhile, Vos, a 3-time victor already, was pulling out all the stops. He and Pitchford, back from overseas commitments, were up 32 places and climbing, while Ferguson and West were also in that select group of SP men who were improving with every outing, and they were getting to grips with a big Ford Ranger. The Barkhuisens confirmed their membership of the same club. Another top 10 finish for them in the dust, mud and grit of the Northwest Province. Toyota's only finish on one of the tougher races of the season was Visser and Badenhorst, who brought their charge home in 9th place, scoring points in the process. In the the rest of the minor placings, overtaking was still executed within sight of the finish line to secure another handful of points. Not that the often narrow, dusty and scarred surfaces gave a lot of opportunity for that to happen. Weichelt and Els cemented their Class D win in the N1 4x4 Toyota, making the category battle as open as it was at the beginning of the season, and in the process getting their noses ahead of the Zermattens in the title chase. With the rest of the Class D protagonists relegated to the minor placings and looking on. Class E was also far from over, and Gewald van Breda and Johan de Tooy had a big night after clinching their first win at Sun City in the Potch Plastics Hilux. Ahead of Visser and Leroux, the championship pace setters from the word go. With the all-yellow Toyota of the brothers Hutting, Diedrich and Dani nabbing third place ahead of some of the more fancy teams. But it was a wire-to-wire win for Grobler and Moore. They were in the zone after being under pressure. The Burley man celebrated his 31st year in motorsport in typical fashion, hard and all out. Voss had an awesome drive from 53rd place all the way up to 5th. Weichelt and Els held off the Zermattens, and in Class E, Van Breda and de Tooy provided the big surprise.
It was unbelievable. It was nice to be back, nice to be in a winning streak. It wasn't easy. I think the biggest thing today was to keep out of trouble, miss all the rocks and whatever, as I say. We had a few heart-stopping moments. We had a car that was going into the stage and we nearly hit it in the side. And then 20 kilometers from the end, we had one of the specials that was sitting in a ditch, and we couldn't get through. So we stopped there for about just a minute or a little bit more. And yeah, we were worried that we didn't know how far the other guys were behind us. But at the end, John did a great job. It's a very good organized event, this, and the marking was very good. Yeah, and I think it was one of the best ones.
Vehicle and asset finance from ABSA, overcoming.
The Dakar Rally is back. The world's toughest rally has a new home. 9,000 kilometers across the barren wastes of Argentina and Chile. The Dakar Rally starts the 2nd of January. Exclusive to Supersport. Sponsored by Total. You know where to turn.
From ABSA, going the extra mile to get you financed.
The African Ivory route may have run through Polokwane, but the 66 teams that lined up for round 6 of the ABSA Off-Road Championship were looking for gold instead. Limpopo's unique dry deciduous forests, challenging landform and hot weather made it the ideal place to test vehicles and their occupants for the next round of the National Off-Road Battle in the SP, D and E classes. The race, scheduled for 400 k's, took in fast flat roads with a whole host of gullies, washouts, thick riverbed sand, and then the typical bushveld with its thorn trees, which limits visibility severely at times, strain car and driver. Nissan's Duncan Voss and Ralph Pitchford were setting the pace in defense of their national championship crown, but were only 8 points ahead of the veteran crew, Neil Woolridge and Kenny Shorthammer in their Ford Ranger. While Cronje and Birken were more than desperate to add a second win to their victory tally for the year 2008, but the victors in the Eastern Cape in April had their work cut out for them. Voss, though, after his bad break in the Northwest Province, went to work with a vengeance and looked like he had the bit between his teeth. The Limpopo dust, though, was a massive hurdle to overcome. Visibility was limited at times, especially if you got stuck behind slower traffic, and the resultant grit which gets into parts that, when they get worn, are damaged due to the excessive grinding. The Unifreight Ford of Van Tonder and Guapo was again steady as she goes and moved into 10th place. At the midway point of the Limpopo 400, the sun had finally crept out, but rather mercilessly there was no wind to speak of, so the dust was billowing and just hanging around. The locals came out in their droves to see South Africa's finest exponents of off-road driving tackle the best that their province could throw at the drivers and navigators, and they certainly got their money's worth. The Zermattens followed up on their only second place of the season at Sun City by striding to a confident win again here in the Limpopo province. In fact, they were a huge 13 minutes ahead. And that was on this crew, Delmas Kappel, Ramon and Moret Besaidnout in their Toyota Hilux. That left Kutsiela Vaskachny and Johan Gerber in third place and gave the Rhobie Nissan pairing a much-needed points gap at the top of the Class D battle. A nice position to be in. But to be fair, this battle was far from over. In Class E, the 4x4 Mega World entry with Dion Venter and Ian Palmer at the top of their game for their first win stole the points away from Fran Bedard and Visser, who were deeply locked into combat for the national championship. Perhaps a matter of two dogs and the third escapes with a bone. But up front, the checkered flag waited for the Nissan. After just 6 hours, it was win number 25 for Grobler and for Nissan, an unprecedented 49th victory in 62 races since 01.
We're very pleased at the moment. We don't exactly know where the other guys are. We arrived here first, and we'll just see in the next few minutes what time the other guys are going to be in. But yeah, we'll see. And
they did. A second win for Grobler, closing the gap on the top of the points log on the rest of the contenders, while the Ford team again got a podium, their 6th in a row. Only 6 points separated the top 3 drivers, and the Zermattens in the red Class D hard body had a 15-point cushion, while Visser and York Leroux had a tight hold on the Class E championship race. 2 races to go and a tough route. Several national championships still up for grabs, fired-up drivers and crews, and a new innovative spectator area just 10 kilometers from the finish. That's what the 08 Toyota Dealer 400 in Leidenburg and Mpumalanga offered. The 7th and penultimate round of the ABSA Off-Road Championship was to be more spectator-friendly than ever before, while teams were impressed with a route layout that boasted new roads, 50% of which they'd never turned a wheel in anger on before. Off-road enthusiasts were really entertained on these new sections too, and it again highlighted the tight racing that had been a hallmark of the whole season. Chief organizer Willie du Plessis of the South African Motor Club had a few nice and sometimes nasty surprises and ups and downs in store for the drivers and their faithful navigators, which included some really uncompromising terrain and very dry testing countryside, with the odd bit of mud thrown in after early summer rains. For Duncan Foss, the pressure was on. The defending national champion had a tough task ahead. This year, the severity and competitiveness in off-road racing was scintillating, and in the Production Vehicle Championship, the fans and teams expected a battle of epic proportions, and that's what they got. The old mining town nestles at the foothills of the infamous Long Tom Pass, and surrounded by Stemkampsberg and Marsberg mountain ranges, the highest points in Mpumalanga, it was part of the challenge that the off-roaders took on too. Grobler, chasing a 5th national title, could ill afford another non-finish, like Ian Moore did at their own event, the Nissan Sugarbelt 400. Most of the championship contenders and their crews still had to drop 1 result from their season points total. The 4-time champ needed every single one available out there, and early on, the tough route claimed several victims. Swanepoel and Solomon again produced a drive worthy of praise in the IBM Cement entry, while the Zermattens were on their way to win number 4 of the season. After their non-finish in KZN, they've been on a great run. Even the co-drivers' championship reflected the high standard of competition. Kenny Scholthammer, who shares the cab of the Ford with Woolridge, led Nissan John Moore, who rides alongside the crafty Grobler, by a scant 2 points. It was all to play for, even for the navigators. And in Class E, Peckham and Santoro created some havoc as they charged to a win ahead of Visser and Leroux, although the Toyota lads were comfortably atop the championship log. With Thomas Rundle and Rob Howie taking another podium place in the dry, dusty conditions of Leidenburg. But the day belonged squarely to Grobler, a barnstorming drive bringing him right back into contention. A 3rd ABSA Off-Road Championship win in a row, and Woolridge and Scholthammer getting a 7th consecutive podium. The Zermattens had a championship-clinching victory, assuring them of the title with 1 race to go, while Visser and Leroux clinched the Class E win in 10th place overall. They had a 21-point gap, title done and dusted. Woolridge, desperate for a win, pushed hard.
Look, we can't complain about that. We've had a good run. We pushed hard today, but we couldn't catch Hannes in the last bit. It was just too dusty. We get close, and then there was just too much dust, so we kind of like settled for second near the end. It just just looked after the car and brought it back. But we've had a good day. We had a couple of little scares. We had a fuel pressure problem just before the service point, and didn't slow us down, but there was definitely the car wasn't going like it should do. But otherwise, a great run, no problems.
For the 8th and final race on the calendar, a brand new event, the RFS Magalies 400, made its appearance. It started and finished at the Tarleton International Raceway outside Krugersdorp and brought an entirely new feel to the 2008 season-ending finale. To top that, the overall championship was poised to be decided in the final race of the year. There was only 4 points that covered the top 3 contenders, and it had all come down to this, the last 400 Ks of racing in the last race of the season. That's after 3,500 Ks of really tough racing already all over Southern Africa. It was Neil Woolridge and Kenny Scholthammer in the forward, leading from Hannes Schrobler and Johan Moore in the one Nissan, and defending champions Duncan Voss and Ralph Pitchford in the other. It was gloves off in the home straight. Throw in Mark Cronje and his stablemate Anthony Taylor, who were both eager for a win, and throw in 1 or 2 more eager beavers, and it was clear the championship hunters needed to watch their P's and Q's. Teams such as the Barkhuisens had made massive strides in 08 and were ready to make one more onto the top step of the podium. And don't throw away the Sasol Nissan Navara team's Norwegian import Ivan Tollefson and his British co-driver Quinn Evans. They had yet to taste victory in South Africa and were ready to tantalize their taste buds. Newcomers to the SP class, the Malulan Toyota of brothers Johan and Werner Horn acquitted themselves well and took 12th in the SP lineup, while Anthony Taylor, a national champion as a teenager, was growing in his role as Toyota's new hope. Manufacturers' National Title Championship chase, it was Toyota who were hoping for more great support from their privateers for the factory teams, while Nissan was holding thumbs for a clean sweep up at the top, which they'd already done once during the season. In Class D in the Ryobi Nissan, Henry and Maurice Matten had already made space for the silverware at home. They led by 35 points and had it all sewn up, but they were still looking for win number 5. And they were certainly not going to be handed the victory easily. Outgoing champion Weichelt and Els would make sure of that. The RFS Magalies Route 2 was a dusty affair, and one had to handle with care. The sponsors as Christian de Plooy and Henk Janse van Vuren in the RFS Toyota Hilux gave the crowd even more value, and they flew along. With the Huntings also in the thick of the dust and the Class E battle. They were chased home all the way by Malcolm Koch and Wayne Brink. Even at the death of the season, the lads were racing hard. Barton Tyre Services, Rundle and Howie grabbed yet another podium, leaving them to look back on a very respectable season. But by now you knew it. There was yet another twist in the tale. Voss got it to the line first, but he won 4 races as compared to Grobler's 3, so Duncan effectively won the championship on a count-out on wins, 133 points apiece, and Voss got the nod due to 1 more race victory. The Zermattens clinched a very popular 5th win in the series, while Visser and LaRue brought it home in 4th place to secure a great Class E championship win. Voss was exhausted, but pleased.
We had a great weekend, you know, we put it on pole, we led from the start the vehicle category, and couldn't have gone better for us. It was really a great weekend.
You did have to overcome some disappointments early in the season, Duncan.
Yeah, you know, it's such a difficult sport, you know, you get punished for the slightest mistake, and the cars go through such hard terrain that you can't always expect to have a 100% finishing record, but no, we're ecstatic.
Grobler should also be lauded for a great comeback in the second part of the season, and hats off too to Woolridge and Scholthammer, who were never worse than 3rd and never better than 2nd. A fine season was had by all. The hotly contested Manufacturers Trophy, and Toyota triumphed with superb support from their privateers, stealing the title held by Nissan. Our season review of the 3 classes in the special vehicles comes your way after this.
Vehicle and asset finance from ABSA, going off the beaten track, and from ABSA, overcoming all obstacles.
Now to our look back at the ABSA Off-Road Championship special vehicle season in 3 different classes, starting off again in the Western Cape in the idyllic little town of Darling. It certainly spelled out a season that was going to be a humdinger. In this category, all the cars referred to as space train vehicles, the competition is just as exacting and fast. There were new cars, new designs, old favourites, new faces and the veterans. But amongst all of them, there was a burning desire to succeed within all the top competitors. Up ahead, after the prologue had settled the starting order, there were two tough and dusty 166-kilometre loops that made up the route in Darling. Fast improving father and son team Cully and Quentin Stilwart set the pace early on and were proving to be a formidable pairing in the canary yellow Stilwart Zarco. Most competitors quickly found out that the dry route was a severe test of skill, patience and courage. Class A, the premier category in the specials, boasted 15 entries for the Darling race, and the defending national champions Evan Hutchinson and Akim Bergman were back, but unfortunately they rolled, was hit by Naheem Mossaji and both cars caught alight. Luckily there were no serious injuries following prompt action from Woolridge and Schulthammer, who stopped and helped. Terence Marsh and Pieter Groenewald had a superb second lap to storm into the lead, while Bez Besaidnout and Johan de Bruin steered Deridenko back into the lead of Class B, relegating Gil Nel and Dion de Kock into second place in their Luke Zarco Truggy. And in the all-new Class B, the brothers David and Gary White certainly had all the horses going in one direction, and in the lead in Class P in their Rurikon back with its 3.5-litre Nissan engine. But Nick Gosler and Richard Carolyn were not letting up and chased them all the way home. At the line it was, however, Marsh, the 05 champion, who celebrated a 34-second victory over Peter Ruthven and Deval Boshoff. And in Class P and B, the form book went out the window. All it meant was that the championship battles were wide open.
Great start to the season, great start. We've worked really hard, both in the workshop and ourselves, myself and Peter, really worked hard through December and January on our fitness, making sure that we can keep our intensity up. Came off a bad year last year, and it's just nice to see everything paying off, it really has.
And that's the key in off-road racing, preparation, and lots of it, all the time. Not only on car setup, but also on physical and mental fitness. In the rally-like conditions en route of the Eastern Cape 500, those factors all came into play. Round 2 of the 08 ABSA Off-Road Championship was a tough challenge. This route was totally different to any other the drivers in the specials had faced before. A lot of the route was run in the Longmore forests, and this area hosts the VW Rally, a round of the Sasol South African Rally Championship. So crews with any rally experience had a great idea of exactly how to keep things going and what to expect in the sort of terrain the off-road fraternity does not often visit. Western Cape winners Marsh and Groenewald again had a fast start. The combination had scored the maximum points at the pipe opener and was sitting pretty, while Peter Ruthven and Deval Boshoff were not here because Ruthven was getting married. Their stablemates Michael Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson in the other Regent Racing back were also getting good reckoning of themselves and were up into the top 5. But they were all getting reports on how quickly the Stilwarts were racing. They were building on a 3-minute cushion over Marsh and Groenewald. Cully's brother Herman was just behind the 07 championship runners-up, the father and son combination of Nick and Ryan Harper, who were again doing duty in the big turquoise Atlas Copco bat. And Herman, with Paul Helberg riding shotgun, was going all out to try and catch them. Sandwiched in there too, it was Clint Gibson and Gary Campbell. The racing was tight, with another championship title contender Shamir Variawa and his co Siegfried Rousseau in that big Total Motorsport Porter in 6th place and catching up all the time. Whitehouse and Carlson were right on song for a good finish and some much-needed championship points to open their account. In Class B, it was Louw de Bruin and Rudy Brits who was making all the others sit up and take notice as they went away to a big 11-minute win. With the ever-steady young Cryer and his new nav Tiddo Furcht not that far behind, but holding on well. And Nel with de Kock full third again in the Class B battle for supremacy. In the all-new P-Class for cars with engines with 6 cylinders or less, the two Dons, Thompson and Blakey, were moving up front, leaving Gosler and Carolyn to eat their dust. But line honours went to the Stilwarts, who took the special vehicle victory. They had time to spare over Marsh and Groenewald. In fact, 2 minutes and 47 seconds. The Harpers signalled a return to form with a 4th, and in Class B it was de Bruin and Brits leading on the 5 cars that got to the finish line in one piece. The Dons were the only Class B team to finish.
It was quite difficult. You couldn't. We just couldn't pass him. We caught him. We sat behind him the whole of the second loop. He managed to pull a little bit on us. We had an accelerator cable that was sticking, but it's just extremely dangerous. I mean, I really didn't enjoy it. We'll take whatever result we can get out of this. It wasn't ideal. It was tough. It rained during the second loop. You can't get past anybody. So we take off wherever we'll take the result. It was tough. It was hard.
But things were destined to be sweeter in the third round in the Nissan Sugarbelt 400 in Aston, KwaZulu-Natal. The early weather predictions for the 400 kilometers was sunny with a high of 28 degrees and 91% humidity. That spelled good racing, and the headquarters for the third leg of the National Championship Series was the Beaumont Aston Farmers Club outside Pietermaritzburg. Once the prologue over 65 k's had been completed, the racing proper was on, and the specials relished the opportunity to race in this part of South Africa. Prologue specialists Gary Bertelt and Andre Vermeulen made their Atlas Copco Porter sing along in the thick bush of the Holiday Province, while defending national champions Motorite's Evan Hutchison and Achim Bergman were ready to defend their title after their accident in the Western Cape. Alberts and Hunter made their first seasonal appearance in the top 5 in the Rapsa Bat, and they held on to take a well-deserved third place. But the dust in Aston was a great leveller, but no one told John Moore and Tom Klaassen that. No one told them that number 13 was supposed to be unlucky too. They scored championship points with the 4th place. Whitehouse and Carlson showed off their consistent form when they again bagged a fistful of points when they took 5th in the specials. Herman Sulwalt got the better of his brother here, but it wasn't for a lack of trying. The Sulwalts were racing hard, and after Cully's win, every point would make a difference in the title race. Ron Bailey and Warren Manthe rounded out the top 8, holding off Shamir Varayawa in the Total Motorsport Porter. He and Rousseau had several problems and were playing catch-up, and luckily they were too. The same could have been said for Brandon Harkis and Richard Leek, who had teamed up in the second Motorite Bat. Brian Furcht grabbed another win and had a lot of time to spare in Class B. While Simon Beckett and Stephen Harris made a big splash and collected the resultant points for a fine runners-up spot. And the Class B championship battle was starting to hot up. Nolan de Kock again took a place on the podium, earmarking them as one of the most consistent crews in the category. And in Class P, the brothers Johan and Etienne Besaidnout had more than half an hour to spare, a comprehensive win in anyone's book, leaving the two Dons in second in KwaZulu-Natal. It was, however, a huge win for Bertelt and the Atlas Copco team, while Motorite was happy to score opening points with Hutchison and Bergman. The Sulwalt stayed on top of the championship log, with Marsh and Groenewald 4 points back. Bertelt's win jump-started his challenge. And it was top of the class for Jan Cryer, while the Besaidnout brothers got a big win in Class P.
Tough day of racing. It was close racing. At no stage did they allow us to get a gap and just take it easy. We had to race the whole way to the line. But I must say, Atlas Copco have been fantastic, and really the people around me that have made the difference. I haven't changed much myself, but my mechanic, Kenny Veringer, has made a big difference, and having the two Parker brothers as a backup crew has just been phenomenal. It's just really made a lot of difference to the team.
The big turquoise and white car just 4 weeks later led off the start line in the Kalahari Desert of Botswana in pursuit of a second consecutive title. But over 1,000 kilometers, anything can happen, and often does. It's an event with a rich history and even harsher conditions. The 4th race of ABSA's Off-Road Championship for the special vehicles could be as tough as they come. For most teams, this little get-together is more taxing than all the others. It's outside the borders of South Africa. It's 3 days worth of concerted effort, and then it's hot, dusty, dry, and it's the longest of all the races. 2.5 times, actually. Shamir Varayawa and Siegfried Rousseau love tough conditions, and they got them in Botswana, and they loved them in Botswana. The Total Motorsport duo whizzed through, around and over all the obstacles put in front of them, knowing that it was the father and son combination, Cully and Quinton Sulwalt, who were leading the national championship. They were just 4 points ahead of former champion Terence Marsh and his navigator Pieter Groenewald. The desert race requires almost 16 hours of complete concentration in the car, which in itself is quite a feat. So physical fitness and the resultant mental sharpness is an absolute must. Class P was again a march to victory for the Besaidnout boys in their Edenko bat, again pushing the two dons, that's Thompson and Blakey, into the runners-up spot. But no one could match new dad Variawa and Rousseau for pace, guile and cunning in the pursuit of preserving calm mind and body. He won by almost 3 minutes, but Cully and Quinton Silwald's third meant that they were now just 7 points ahead, while the rest of the chasers were well within striking distance. Father Bez Besaidnout in Class B and his boys in Class P celebrated victory on the same weekend, both strengthening their championship points and thus hopes. It's taken Variawa an age to taste victory here.
It's an unbelievable feeling. We've been trying, look, I've been racing for 15 years, and I've been trying for 15 years to win this race. And today it happened. I guess the new arrival in the family, the new baby on Thursday made all the luck, gave us the luck. We got in front 5 Ks from the start this morning, and we've remained there ever since. No problems with the car, just kept a good pace, and monitoring where the guys were behind us. And I tell you, this last 100 Ks has been but nerve-wracking.
The Total Motorsport team's win meant a leap up the points log with Marsh and Groenewald 9 shy. The men from Palabora were in control on top, but were they really? In the Class B and P battle, De Bruyn and Brits only had 8 points worth of breathing space, while Thompson and Blakey's ultra-consistent driving and navigating in the first 4 races gave them 12 points. With the halfway mark passed and just 4 races left in the series, the special vehicles dominated in the Sun City 400 prologue, meaning that the route suited the cars with their massive engines and huge suspension travel down to the ground, if you'll pardon the pun. Nick Harper with Sunryan riding shotgun in the Atlas Copco bat shot out of the gate and clocked the fastest time for the so-called space frame cars, signalling a return to winning form for them. Variawa's win in the longest race of the series gave him a lot of confidence, and the Total driver was actually brimming with it. Colin Matthews and Alan Smith in the Century Property Development bat was another crew who had made consistency their watchword, and they kept the pressure squarely on Variawa, who was exactly 2 minutes ahead of them. The Harpers battling a misfire did translate their prologue form into a first podium of the year, giving them a well-earned 3rd place. But the championship pace-setters Cully and Quinton Silwald got the Silwald Racing bat Spec 4 to the line in 4th place, and they again scored points, riding without a clutch for the last 300 Ks. They kept their championship hopes alive, but then again, so did their rivals Marsh and Groenewald, moving up from 10th place to take 5th. Berthold and Vermeulen made it 2 Atlas Copcos in the first 6. 32 minutes back with only 9 Class A finishes, underlining the fact that Sun City's 400 Ks are truly tough to negotiate. Ruthven and Boshoff nabbed 7th place in 7 hours and 10 minutes, with Clint Gibson and Gary Campbell making another appearance in the top 10 in their Gibson Racing bat. The Northwest's local population loved the spectacle, sound pace and furious work rate of the big bangers as they came by, providing a huge spectacle. The Staffix Racing crew of Alistair Stubbs and Peter de Wit celebrated a first win for them in 08 in Class B. While championship 4th placer Jan Kraai and his nav Tiddo Vogt had battled flat tyres all the way around, but were still firmly settled into 2nd. With Gil Nel and Dion de Kock the only other finishers in a class that suffered no less than 6 retirements. The Rubicon bat bearing number P4 was in the skilled hands of David White, with younger brother Gary calling out the route. They finally, after 300 Ks, wrested control of the class battle from the other contenders, with Gosler and Carolyn eventually almost an hour behind in 2nd place. For Variawa, it was a 2nd consecutive victory and a win that kept them right in the hunt. The Silwalds only had a splendid 2-point lead, and it was all to race for with only 3 chances left. Stubbs and de Wit strode to a handsome win in Class B, and in P, it was a whitewash as the brothers brought her home first.
We had a nice run. First loop we lost the belt on the supercharger, so we were about 30% down on power. Came with the pits, changed the belt, and then our second loop was great. We managed to catch Shamir a little bit, but then on the straights, that port of his gives it legs, and then he ran away from us a little bit. But otherwise, we had a nice good clean run.
The Limpopo province stretches out over a massive 124,000 square kilometers, with the impressive Waterberg biosphere, as declared by UNESCO, forming a great backdrop for off-road racing. The 6th round of the National Championship over 400 kilometers took to the bush here, and as Class A, B and P teams drove into the capital of Limpopo, Polokwane, the stage was set for this epic battle. Just 29 points separated the top 4. Everyone expected a tough race, and that's exactly what they got. Variawa and Rousseau were shooting for win number 3 in a row, but were left chasing a concentrated and measured performance from Gary Bertelt and Andre Vermeulen, who were themselves waiting for win number 2 of the season. Their teammates, the Harpers, again took 3rd, while championship leaders, the father and son team of Collie and Quentin Silwald, took their 2nd consecutive 4th place. John Moore and Tom Klaassen overcame a non-finish at Sun City and bounced back nicely with 5th, while Marsh and Groenewald were just not quick enough to repeat their early season heroics here in the Limpopo province. In off-road racing, the old adage, it's prevention rather than cure that does the trick, rings true. One has to preserve the car for the long haul, and Steady Does It is another one that you could probably add to the list. For the special drivers, there are always unseen traps which can wreck a car and any championship hopes. Taking National Crown hopes, all 3 categories were still up for grabs, and in Class B, Hendrik Kraai and Tito Vogt combined to take a well-deserved win, while championship contenders Louw de Bruin and Rudy Britt settled for 2nd. Bez Besaidnout and Johan de Bruin did their championship hopes the power of good with the 3rd place, just 5 minutes further back. And in Class P, the Whites again nabbed the top step of the podium after 3 earlier DNFs. They were racing superbly, and the Besaidnouts scored more valuable championship points in 2nd. But the second 08 win went the way of Bertelt and Vermeulen. However, Variawa's exploits hauled him to the top of the championship battle. Kraai and Vogt were as good as gold in Class B, and a tight battle between the siblings in Class B, in which they were the only finishers.
It absolutely does. In Polokwane here, I've had success before, and it looks like we got success again today. We seem to have just managed to close the gap on Nick Harper, but he made my day a very tough one. He made me work hard for it today.
The penultimate round of the ABSA Off-Road Championship in Lydenburg, and in the special vehicle class, 2 fine mid-season wins in the long and arduous Toyota 1000 Desert Race, and the next, the Sun City 400, followed by that consolidating 2nd in the Limpopo 400, gave the total Porter pair of former champion Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau the lead in both the Drivers' and the Navigators' Championships, but it was only by 5 points. The Silwards had their backspec 4 finely tuned and set up for the conditions in the Toyota Dealer 400, and the tall German driver was ready to let out the reins a little. He was hell-bent on taking a national championship almost 15 years after winning his first one. However, the dust, grit and grass in and around the beauty of Lydenburg finally brought a victory for the defending champion Evan Hutchison and Achim Bergman, who were dogged by bad luck all season. They finally got the Motorite Racing Bat Spec 3 to listen all the way, from go to woe, and were impressive at the head of affairs. The Silwards had a super run all the way through, and even though they could not match Hutchison in the speed department, their 2nd place gave them the championship lead again, as Variawa and Rousseau, after several problems, could not get it to the finish line in one piece. In B, Hendrik Kraai and Tito Vogt made it 2 wins in a row. They tapped into a rich vein of form. With De Bruin and Brits in the Roa Combat again taking 2nd in the forests of Lydenburg. Giel Nel and Dion de Kock went 1 better than the previous race and stepped onto the podium in 3rd place. With Simon Beckett and Stephen Harris having to settle for 4th in their Century Property Development bat. In Class P, Don Thompson in car with Gary Campbell this time scorched to a win in a tad over 8 hours, and that gave him more than 10 minutes worth of breathing space over the chasers. Johan and Etienne Besaidnout, who had had a fantastic season in their Adenko bat. The brothers David and Gary White took 3rd, but the day belonged to Hutchison and Bergman, who made a comeback with a big bang, while Whitehouse and Carlson impressed again with a great 3rd place. It was also a 2nd consecutive win for Kraai and Vogt in Class B, while Don Thompson bagged a fine victory in Class B ahead of the Besaidnout brothers. Hutchison was glad to put a bad year behind him with a great win.
It's been a long year. I never thought I'd feel so much relief over excitement, but yeah, we've had a disastrous year. Just can't believe that we finally put it together and managed to break the spell, you know. We've been up there, we've led most of the races, but just haven't managed to finish them. We've had mechanical breakdowns the whole year, and it looks like hopefully we've shaken those books, and we managed to bring it home.
To the 8th and final race of the season, the RFS Magalies 400, and in the special vehicle class, the battles for the 3 national crowns were far from over. There were 3 contenders within 24 points of each other in Class A, and the 3-horse race between Collie Silwald, Shamir Variawa and Terence Marsh was to be one of spectacular proportions. Palebora's Collie and Quentin Silwald had been ultra steady, with 1 win in the Eastern Cape over 400 Ks and a finish in every one of the 7 races thus far. Matthews and Smith were there or thereabouts every time, but a win eluded them in 2008. They got the runners-up spot 2.5 minutes down, while Variawa's gallant effort was good enough for third, but not enough to change the championship standings. Whitehouse and Carlson was another crew who were very consistent, but again could not clinch a win, but they learnt a huge amount in 08. John Moore, this time with the underpinner at his side, came through from midfield to take 5th place, and despite summer rains aplenty, the Magaliesberg area and its mountains kicked up a lot of dust, making it tough to race all out all the time. The Harpers put to bed a rather strange season for them after being the championship runners-up in 07, while the rest of the Class A entrants enjoyed a brand new route and new challenges on a race that seems to have made a very popular debut. In Class B, even though De Bruyn and Brits had clinched the deal, that didn't stop Jan Kraai and Tiddo Vogt to get the Keymax back to its 3rd top step in a row, with the Besaidnoids producing the best Class B performance of the season, finishing 6th overall. The new Class C Zarco Junior of Johan de Klerk and Louis Pretorius debuted at the RFS Magalies 400. This has been introduced as an ultra-competitive vehicle, and it's to encourage newcomers to the sport at regional and local level. At the line, though, leading the overall special standings and handsomely winning the RFS Magalies 400, and as a result the national championship, it was the Silwots. And the top 5 for classes B and P. Sheer consistency proved to be the most important factor in a dream season for Carl Heinz and Quinton Silwalt in the special vehicle category of the Absa Off-Road Championship. It had taken Kali a long time to clinch another one. In Class B, De Bruyn and Brits had a 15-point win, while the Besaidnout brothers enjoyed a 19-point lead. That was the season that was.
That was the ultimate test, the Absa Off-Road Championship.